Hello everyone, welcome into our latest live broadcast. It's Friday the 23rd of May 2025. I'm CareyHolzman and today we have a new computer build featuring the Lian Digital 207. This is an interesting design in the sense that they have decided to move the power supply to the front. This seems to be the fad of 2025. Expect to see that becoming more common. And they've removed RGB. This is a good beginning. The removal of RGB and added instead a useful screen that doesn't just become a color. By the way, you could have that color of that screen be a solid color like an RGB light, or unlike an RGB light, you can actually have it convey useful information to you regarding CPU temps, system resource utilization, or any other imaginative thing you can come up with to display on the little screen up here, which is far, far more useful, far easier to wire, far more practical, and a better, in my opinion, value for your money than buying little tiny fairy lights. Now that is just my attitude, but I can tell you this is almost to a level where we could put this in an office without being laughed at and mocked by other business members and even employees, because there is it's sort of like when you're in business, how you're judged is going to be based on how seriously you take your business. A lot of people, you know, when they're spending their money, they're not usually laughing about it, right? So they don't want to see that you have all of this fancy stuff without thinking that they're paying you too much, right? Also, the idea that you would be spending the kind of money additionally to buy the equipment and maintain the equipment is just an excess of cash. It's flaunting, and it doesn't go over. Flaunting as a business is not going to go over well to your customers. If you're a plumber and you show up as a plumber or a construction worker in a nicer, like brand new luxury car, you can rest assured that customer is going to be asking themselves, am I overpaying you? So there are a number of reasons that are more practical, besides trying to impress people with how much money you waste, to running a business where you have hundreds or even thousands of computers, where even the LCD screen doesn't make any sense. However, I've said before, and I'll say again, the whole RGB thing is a trend that will be looked upon like an old high school yearbook photo. People are going to be embarrassed by it. It's the disco equivalent that will be, look, I'm man enough to admit I like disco music, most of it. And I still enjoy hearing Funky Town from time to time. But I wouldn't want every song to be that way all the time. It was a short-lived fad. I think RGB is on its way out, or they're going to come up with another way to integrate it in a way that's less invasive and costly, so that it will be just as easy to turn it off and completely disable it without having to deal with all the hassle and extra expense. And if that's the way it moves, I'm okay with that too, so that businesses and home users alike can purchase the same cases. As a YouTube channel, I'm not an enthusiast sitting at home spending money on toys. I'm building tools. I do build a toy now and again, let's be honest, but I'm focused on building tools where we're trying to build as many tools as possible that are useful and practical with the amount of money that we have. So we could blow it all in one big build, and we've done that before, and that almost sank the whole channel. And unfortunately, the reality is, in many cases, you're never going to recover that income. So if you're somebody that has that kind of expendable income that you can blow $10,000 on a gaming PC, I'm not telling you not to, but I am telling you you're in the 1%. So enjoy your 1%. We walk in different circles. We live in different worlds. And it's not something I care to pursue personally, because there's not enough work out there to keep me in a business, in a career. So a hobbyist, they can just keep building and building so long as their money is there to provide them what they need for funds to pay for their hobby. But as a business, I need to generate a profit. It's my only source of income, and I have to be very practical. I also have to consider the expense of my customer, because if I'm overcharging my customer, there's a good chance my customer's going to figure that out and go take their business somewhere else. So for all of those reasons, what we're seeing here is a shift. And Lian Li, there's a few others that are starting to move that power supply up to the front now. And that holds a couple of benefits, which we'll get into a little bit later. Now, because I'm trying to stretch the money out as far as it will go, I want to make sure that the parts I'm buying are not the most expensive parts, which also tend to be the most finicky, require more time, and require more maintenance. Instead, I'm looking for the best bang for the buck, however I can get it, from reliable, reputable parts, buying from a reputable seller. I'm not going on Facebook Marketplace to buy parts I'm going to sell to a customer. You might do that. My business will never sink to that level of amateurism. Now, I'm not saying that that makes it better than anybody else. I'm simply explaining the policies and procedures that are applied to my business, no differently than if you go to a hospital and there's certain things you can't do. A lot of times when you go to a restaurant, you cannot bring in your own food or drink. You have to have shoes and a shirt for service. These kind of policies exist based on the restaurant owner's decisions on what kind of business they want to run. What sort of message do you want to send to the public? So if a shirtless, shoeless person walks in and you are concerned that that may be putting off other customers from your business, you have every right to say, no shoes, no shirt, no service. When I was in Lake Havasu, Arizona, because they have a lot of spring break, college kids going there to the beach, the IHOP or Denny's restaurant says, you cannot sit on a chair in a thong. You must have shorts or pants on, because obviously it's a concern for many of the other customers who are not college kids and are disgusted that you'd put your bare bottom on a chair that we all share. So to suggest that in any way that makes Denny's better than, you know, another restaurant is a preposterous misunderstanding and miscomprehension of why those rules exist. Without standards, customers can shop somewhere else where their standards align with them. And if you want to go sit your bare bottom down in a restaurant, you can do that somewhere else, but not at that restaurant. So, you know, to avoid any sort of that negative judgment that I often will hear from the public that are watching videos, not the actual public that spends money and does business, just the ones sitting at home watching videos with nothing else to do but complain and judge. I just want to shut those down right now and say your participation is voluntary, and your business, if that's the kind of person you are, isn't the kind of business that I would want. So somebody that says, well, I wouldn't give you my business, I don't want your business. What makes you think that you offer any value to my company that I would even accept you for a customer? And so thankfully, that mostly is only seen on the internet. I don't see that in real life. Very, very rarely. I've had a couple of phone calls from people that were expecting an unrealistic response and service for a tiny little bit of money, or they wanted me to do it for free and then they decide what it's worth. No, it's not how my business runs. You don't get to pick how my business runs, but you do get to shop somewhere else, and we'll both be happier when you do. So these policies and procedures that I present to you are there for you to have a deeper understanding of the type of value and the type of image I want to relay to my customers of professionalism, of quality, and of value. And hobbyists, it's all about building whatever they can afford to build, and there's no one to answer to. There's nobody to tell them or hold them responsible that what they built is not good enough. The only person they have to please is themselves. Listen, if my business was built on that, I'd be a millionaire. So today, the reason I'm putting all that out there right out of the gate here is the parts we're going to use in today's build. I want to explain why these parts were selected and even where I could save money from a reputable seller and still be able to save significant amounts of money for the exact same make and model of parts. Aren't you interested? Who doesn't want to save money? I mean, I guess there's probably people on the internet that will say, I don't care about money. I just spend it all, which probably means they don't have any. Join the rest of us. I think I know why. But anyway, first of all, let's take a look in an introduction to the Lian Li Digital 207. And what I found mostly appealing about this case was its price. Lian Li cases are good quality, well-built cases. I don't think I've seen one I didn't like. I like some better than others, but I don't think there's any I absolutely despised. And if we go over to our window capture, let me pull up the first of our tabs. And these links, by the way, they're all in the video notes below today's video. Let's see, window capture right here. Okay, so this is the Lian Li LANCOOL 207 Digital. So it's an ATX case. It's got a small screen up here. It's got 4 fans installed, 2 140s and, let's see, with 2 140s and 2 140s. Okay, so apparently 4 140s, according to the math. And you get the screen, you get the case, you get the fans for $109.99. How is that even possible? You do see they have multiple versions of this case with and without the screen. The screen is only adding about $19. Is that right? No, $20, which is a really good price for a digital screen like that if you were to buy that separately. But if you're on a really tight budget and you wanted to buy something really inexpensive, you know, Lian Li has cases below $100. You know, as you add the fancy nonsense, things get a little bit more expensive. So this is a recently released product. I was like, hey, that looks really interesting. Let's give her a shot. We can count the number of slots in back to see that that's a full ATX case, which means it will accept anything smaller as well. So micro ATX and ITX automatically will fit in there. Jumping over to the next tab is our motherboard. So the MSI B760 motherboard. I went with this board because we're going to be using a 13th gen Intel chip. Again, looking at bang for the buck. And this motherboard was $205. Amazon's got it on sale for $165. And I think at the time I purchased it, it was $175. Except down here on the right, it says saved with used, whoops, saved with used like new. This is coming from Amazon. Usually it tells us. It says free returns. Oh no, it ships from a different, oh no, that's new. It's coming from a company. Used, it's coming from Amazon. And here's what's great. $120 for the exact same motherboard is, by my math, $45 cheaper, or nearly what, 30% cheaper than the board is brand new. And it's the exact same board. And if anything, I think you actually get this board faster, the used one. And if there's any problem with it, because it's an Amazon, yeah, see it says sold by Amazon and fulfilled by Amazon, you have that Amazon full 30-day return policy no differently than if you were to bought it new. So we don't know why somebody returned this, but in most cases it's because they don't know what they're doing or they don't understand what they bought. Very rarely there will be damage to the board or there's something wrong with the board, in which case you just simply return it for free. So at most it's an inconvenience to delay your build until you get another board. That was a significant savings. If it's only a $5 or $10 savings, I'm probably not interested in taking the risk. But for $20, $30, $40 or more, sign me up, especially coming from Amazon warehouse. Next thing over is our CPU. I decided to go with a 14500. I was thinking I was doing a 13500. And the reasoning behind this is if you start pricing out the CPUs, like let's say, for example, I'm looking for a processor for this build, and I'm thinking I want to do a 13, let's do a 14600, which I know, 14600K, I know is going to need a cooler. So a 14600K seems like a really good price at $199, except we're going to have to keep that bad boy cool. And these do run a bit hot, so a cheap cooler ain't going to cut it. And by cheap, I mean a small cooler. We're going to have to put a larger cooler, which, you know, does add to the build process and complexity. Like even if we put a Thermaltake Assassin on there, for example, which would probably do the job. How much extra are we adding? Another $40, right? And then this has RGB. I don't want it. We can do it without the RGB for $3 less. That's fair. Here's one for 35 bucks that'll work. I'm going to find the cheapest. But look how much more complicated this is to get this installed with 2 fans. And, you know, you're going to need something pretty beefy on a K-style processor. So when we add $34.90 onto the cost of, let's just say, $199, versus look at the 14500 without the K. Let's see. I learn how to use my keyboard. 14500. You're pretty much at the same price with a stock cooler, and it uses less power, so it doesn't require the bigger cooler. The installation is so much easier, and everything's in one little package here. You're not, you know, getting a separate cooler, and this cooler is more than adequate for this processor. And when you look at the difference between the 14500 and the 14600K, you'll see this has 6 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores, and up to 5 gigahertz. The 14600K it's almost immeasurably different. You've got the same number of performance and efficiency cores. It's just that it's unlocked for overclockers, and its clock speed will be, what, 5.1 or something very insignificant. What does it say? 5.3. So it is, out of 5,000 megahertz, this one will do 5,300 megahertz, 300 megahertz more, which works out to be, oh gosh, I don't know, 7% faster. Like, can you tell 7%, really? And of course the 5.3 or the 5 in either case is a turbo frequency. It doesn't run that way all the time, it's just when needed. So you're gonna spend 200 bucks on this plus another amount of money for the cooler, and then go through the process of installing a more complex cooler. This cooler just snaps in, the cooler on the 14500 just snaps into place. But here's what's interesting. If we look at a 13500, the generation before that also includes the cooler, it's only what, 20 bucks cheaper, right? And again, you start looking at look at the processor speed here. 2.6 is your standard. You're looking at 65 watts. You're looking at the 13500 is actually a little bit faster on the baseline idle speed, but the turbo is slower. And on this one, the baseline speed is lower, but the turbo is faster. So it's kind of a draw on these. It's very hard to decide. So what I would do is look and see if anybody's returned any. But here's the problem. A lot of times, like this manufacturer, if I order this, I will not get it until next month, number one. Number two, a lot of times they'll say it doesn't come with a cooler. That puts me back into having to spend around $40 or more to buy the cooler. Yeah, CPU only. There is no cooler. That cooler's worth $40. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And it's way easier to install. And any cooler bigger than that is unnecessary. You've been watching too many YouTube videos if you think the included cooler is not adequate, because Intel would have all of these returns and nobody would be buying their chips due to their lack of reliability. Most computer systems sold around the world use stock coolers, just so you know. It's only a very small percentage of enthusiasts that make up a very large percentage of internet activity in this discussion topic that would have you convinced that that fan's not good enough. They're doing something to their system not kosher, right? They're taking it and they're pushing it beyond the engineering boundaries, requiring more aggressive, more expensive cooler, and they're probably adding unnecessary RGB, and they're just wasting, in my opinion, wasting their money and convincing you their justification in doing so because look at how good it looks. Absolutely insane. Going back now at the solid state drive, I've got a few of these fanxiangs brand new in a box, and they're awesome. I've never had one go bad. They use all the same components as the big brands you're already aware of, but you can pay a fraction of the price. 60 bucks for a 1 terabyte Gen 4 that'll read up to 7,300 megabytes per second is very, very good. That's a great deal. Now, I'm not sure I would look for one used, because it's like buying a used battery. I don't know what's been done to it, how much it's been beaten, because this is a consumable device, meaning it gets used up over time. Now, for most of us, that'll be beyond our lifetime, but never underestimate somebody doing something abusive and then trying to return it, abusive to the equipment, and then trying to return it and scam the seller out of the money they paid, and then leave it to you, the sucker, for buying it used, finding out, you know, 3/4 of its life has been used up in 2 months. So that's why I make sure, if I am going to buy anything used, I am buying it from Amazon resale. And that way I know I have that 30-day return period, if that's even a risk I want to take. It's only $60. How much could they discount this to make it worth my while? Now, if it's $20 for a returned one, and that returned one has 2/3 of its life gone, well, I paid 1/3 of the price, so I got exactly what I paid for, didn't I? So watch for that. You might just be getting a device that is used up to the percentage amount that they've taken off the price. Now, ORICO has sent us this Raceline Neon RAM, and they said, would you be interested in showcasing this on your channel? And I said, absolutely. The next time I do a build video, I'll gladly use this RAM, so long as we have a color match. So if it's black RAM, it'll be a black build, and white RAM on a white build. This isn't something we did in the past. RAM didn't have a color. It was the color of a circuit board, but here's where we're at today. And I've been very happy with ORICO's product line and prices. So here we're looking at 32 gigs of DDR5 running at 6,000 megahertz with a 5% off coupon from $99. That's going to take off about $5. Pretty good deal. And this is a brand new product, so there's likely nothing returned. This product just was introduced recently. Moving over to the next tab is our power supply. I'm having a hard time finding any low-end or inexpensive EVGA power supplies, which has always been my go-to. But I've had very good luck with Thermaltake for the price. I think I've seen 2 bad Thermaltakes. Usually I end up disposing of them while they still work, because they're obsolete. They have the old connectors, and they just keep running forever. So that's why at $40 for a 500-watt power supply, I couldn't say no to that. That is a bargain all day long. So, you know, it's not modular, and I don't like modular power supplies, as I've talked about, except on builds where you're trying to hide as much cabling as possible and you do not have a power supply shroud. Because otherwise, I like to connect all the modular cables and then hide them, because customers always lose them. And then when you plug the wrong replacement cable in, it blows everything up. So that's always fun. And then ORICO's website here, which we also have in the video notes, if you want to go directly to the manufacturer, you'll see that's their price, which is, when you add another 10% off, it's about $15 cheaper than Amazon, or at least 10% with the coupon. If the coupon's 5% at Amazon, at $99, it brings it to $95. And then if it's at $95 here with a 10% off, you're getting $9.50 off of that. So that's going to bring that down to about $85, $86. Really good and aggressive price point for that much RAM that's RGB with the heat shields on it. So something to keep in mind. But I do like the Amazon return policy. I don't know what the length of shipping or return time is, or hassle when dealing with manufacturers directly. They're all different. So by dealing with one reseller, then everything gets returned to the same place. That's why I don't like PC Part Picker. PC Part Picker will find you all the lowest prices for your components, but they're all coming from different places with different shipping times, different return policies. And you know what? It's not that big of a savings. If you calculate out buying everything from Newegg or everything from Amazon, all in one big purchase, that it all pretty much arrives together in most cases. If you have any problems, it all goes with one return policy. You don't have to look up which company you bought this thing from, especially when the problem happens in months after the build. What the return policy is, how long they take to process it, what their customer service is like. For $10, you know, 10, 20 bucks difference, maybe at most, for that convenience to have everything arrive together faster with that solid, return policy and customer service policies that we're all familiar with. It's your money and it's your gamble. I don't gamble with my business. I cannot afford to lose. So for me, that is an extra investment for insurance. Insurance is not free. If you want to drive your car around without insurance, think of the money you can save. Unless you hit somebody or somebody hits you, in which case you might be going to jail. So is it worth the risk? I can't tell you what you're willing to accept. I can tell you that, again, going back to business policies and procedures, they're there not to say that I'm better than you. They're there to ensure that I'm going to be around tomorrow. Customer buys from me, that may be their concern. If I'm buying from you instead of, let's say, Best Buy, I have a pretty good feeling Best Buy is going to be around a lot longer. Well, I've already been around longer than Best Buy, and I intend to outlast them as well. So I've already built up that history, and the way I've built up that history is, for me, not gambling. It's possible I could have gambled my way to this far up into the industry this many years. Maybe. But if you follow my process, it's guaranteed. So you got a maybe or a guarantee. I choose the guarantee. Now, let me jump over to the chat because that is your introduction to parts. And let me say hello to everybody joining us today. So, first and foremost, who do we have in here today? Where's my... Okay. David Graham says hello. There's William Bird in 3D Everything. And Mark Gaines joining us. Our friend Buster from Scotland with a 10-pound super chat says hello, Carey and Marlena and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh, 58 degrees Fahrenheit or 44 degrees Celsius. Not 40. That would be really hot, wouldn't it? 14.44 degrees Celsius. Woo! It's going to start melting some aluminum over there. Let's see. Thank you, Buster. James Carter says hello, as well as Essential Working Too Hard. And we also have Al Perez joining us, Dustin Fuller and Kurt Schlegel, as well as Ben Laird. Ben also joins us from Scotland. Chris Johnson says hello. And Bajan Guy and Andy Kane are also joining us here in the chat. Luke Greenia says hello. There's our friend Planet Cryos with a $2 super chat. Says good to see everyone. Gots to go cook on the grill. Yeah, I think with Memorial Day here in the United States on Monday, it's a national holiday where it seems like everybody has to barbecue. So my joke is that I think it's a law that you must barbecue. We probably will too. Let's see. Frank Jimmy says hello. Welcome in, Frank. Dorado Systems with $49.99 RON. I always forget what this means. Romanian? Is that Romanian? Thank you, Dorado Systems, for your continued support. He says, hello, Carey and chat. Have a great show. Well, again, thank you very much, and thank you for supporting us. Dazzle555 joins us in the chat and says hello. Barry Klein says hello. And Mara has let us know that there is a 10% off coupon from Amazon and Direct with the coupon codes we have in our video notes. Thank you for that heads up, Mara. Peter VZ from the Netherlands joins us and says hello. All right, full chat room today, right on. Hope you're having a great Friday, the start to our extended weekend here. And what I thought I would do first is just start prepping the system. Anytime that we buy any used parts, we definitely want to immediately check them as soon as possible so that we have that long return, as much of that return period left if needed. I want to know. So I've already just opened the box and taken a look at the motherboard to ensure that the socket looks okay, and it looked perfect. And that's all I care about. I mean, I don't know if we're missing anything in the box, but I've got what I need. So anything additional, if it, we'll look and see what's in the box. It seemed a little sparse. Sometimes when you buy returned product. Customers can be thieves. Whether intentional or not, I can't tell you, but thieves are thieves. So when you're returning a product and you're not returning everything you purchased for, from the way I was raised, you're a thief. Amazon, on the other hand, they want to keep your business, they want to keep you happy, so they might look the other way if you didn't put the screws back in the box, or instruction manual, things that Amazon now either has to pay for, or they have to throw the product away, or sell it off to a refurbisher that can sell it as a used or auction it off. There are many auction places and big retail stores that buy Amazon returns, and there's just a big pallet of randomness. Some things are broken, some things are a value, some things are a ripoff. You don't get to pick and choose. When you buy these pallets, you're buying electronics or you're buying a category, but you're not told what you're going to get. Usually, you just have to dig through it and see what it is and if it's any good. That's how Amazon offloads it, but it costs Amazon money. It's all sold at a loss. They're just trying to recoup some of their losses. So if you bought a product and you're returning it, you should return everything that you purchased, every screw, every bit of instructions that was in the box of the thing you returned, or purchased rather, and then that way it has consideration for the next buyer, whether that buyer is buying it at an auction house. Regardless, imagine how they feel when they buy something that's all there and complete for a fraction of the price because you sent it back, versus it's missing a power cable or something and they can't use it. And the power cable can sometimes cost more than the device did at auction. So we've seen all of this. And Amazon does have the option of turning away those returns if they're not complete, just so you know. But usually, and quite often, little things they'll look the other way on.
You have email?
Oh.
And ORICO sent that like 5 minutes.
Oh, they just sent it.
They just sent it.
Okay, great. Well, let ORICO know we said thank you for looking out for our audience to save some money. And I guess I'll check email right now before I get started. I'll need my glasses. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, let's see what we've got in email. What do we have? Where is it? Oh. Our friend Charlie Purdy sent an Amazon gift card, and a very generous one at that. He says Charlie says this is for the new day, first day with the new lips. Charlie Purdy said this is for the channel and the community. And yeah, well, we're definitely going to use that Amazon gift card. Thank you, Charlie. And yeah, I think that's the only one, unless I'm mistaken. We appreciate you. Thank you for being a member here and a friend of the channel, Charlie. So what I want to do, I'm going to move this off the counter, but just to give it a quick run around here so you can get an idea. Where are the other two fans? They're down here. They're blowing air up. So if you had a GPU installed, that's extra cooling for your GPU. If you don't have a GPU installed, you don't have to hook those up. You could or you couldn't. It's not really going to make any difference whatsoever, other than psychologically. But we do have the two fans up front, and even those likely could be completely disconnected, and it wouldn't affect your system at all unless you have a discrete graphics card or multiple drives installed, which I don't even think the drive's installed in front of those fans. You can put a 360 millimeter cooler up here. I think you can also place one across the front. Here's the problem: if you don't hook up these fans, I think this is magnetic. Yeah, if you don't hook up those fans, you're probably going to get a customer call. Something's wrong. So we hook those up for the visual, not necessarily for any air cooling. And when we talk about, or when you see all these enthusiast YouTube channels talking about air pressure, positive, negative air pressure, the number of blades a fan has, its rotational speed, the amount of air it moves, it's ridiculous. Absolutely insanity, unless you're of that level of tech minutia that doesn't affect the majority of computer owners. In other words, you're pushing your system so hard, overclocking it, overvolting it, you're doing something to it that's requiring that extra airflow. For the rest of us, it makes no difference whatsoever in your computer performance, reliability, security. It's adding more dust. The more fans, the more dust, the more noise, and the more power you're consuming. So it can have the opposite effect, and nobody talks about that. The downside of having too many fans is you've created a vacuum cleaner that's not cleaning anything but the dust out of the air and putting it inside of your computer. Now, if you're doing that for RGB or something, you know, it's just, for me, a complete waste of money. And I would not be surprised if a customer got really offended if I tried to sell that to them. And, you know, they're like, well, how much cheaper would this machine be if you didn't add all the nonsense? So all you need for fans when you're dealing with a regular Intel or AMD processor that includes a cooling fan, you need that cooling fan. Fan that's on the power supply, you need that one too. That's it. So unless you're doing something funky with your system, you don't need any other fans. The minute that you start going above and beyond the engineering requirements because you feel like those aren't good enough for you, even though a team of engineers and department managers and marketing folks have decided what was the best value for the customer, you believe that's not true, don't let me get in your way. You should go work for one of those companies. I wonder how long you'd stay employed there. These little, what can we call these things? They're psychological marketing influence that is impacting a consumer's decision on what to spend their money on. And that's all marketing. But the smarter, the more educated consumer will reverse engineer that and see where their money's going. And when you find out how much of your system is going to unnecessary cooling fans and RGB, you might have learned you can buy two systems for the same price. It didn't have any of that. And they'll both work exactly the same. It's only this, it's not enough attitude that the consumer has either underpurchased and feels the need to get more out of it, and in doing so, they need more aggressive fans and they need to spend more money and make a system more complex, when for less money they could have bought the higher end equipment, the higher end motherboard, the higher end CPU. In many cases, they're just going about it the hard way. If you bought the highest end CPU and the highest end motherboard, so therefore you need the highest end cooling with the highest end case, we're not talking about money and practicality anymore. There's no bargain in car racing. Car racing is one of the most expensive sports on the planet. And they blow through engines, and those engines are extremely expensive. And they have to have a spare car, they have to have spare engines and spare parts and all the tools. Racing, car racing, is an enthusiast activity. It is nothing that you're going to go to the dealership and buy. So if you go to the dealership, you buy the everyday car, you want to turn it into a race car, open your wallet. Lose your gas mileage. Maybe you're not going to pass emissions anymore. Or you could have just bought it from the factory the way you wanted it and probably not had dealt with all of these risks. I'm trying to run a business. I'm trying to stay in business, and customers want a bargain. More customers will buy a $100 computer, like those mini PCs, than will buy a $3,000 gaming rig. In fact, I would posit that I could sell 1,000 mini computers that were $200-300 when offered against a desktop of equivalent performance at $500 or $600. That out of those 1,000 decisions, I would guess somewhere around 960 of those decisions would pick the mini PC, and maybe about 40 would still want the desktop tower. They don't want to let it go. And that number is changing as we march forward, as people are now starting to see the power of the mini PCs and realizing this is unnecessary unless you're an enthusiast. In other words, if you've got the extra time and money to spend, this makes sense because you have nothing else to spend your money on, or for whatever reason, it floats your boat. But for the rest of us, we're starting to realize slowly we're overspending. We're buying a school bus when all we needed was a 4-seat sedan. Why are we getting this large school bus that's expensive? It's expensive to insure. It gets terrible gas mileage. It's difficult to park, et cetera, when I can buy a much smaller, more compact car that's more flexible. It's more responsive, or just as responsive in some cases. Gets better gas mileage. It's more efficient. It costs less to purchase. and the maintenance on it costs less and is less frequent. So there's always going to be a category of our society that wants to go extreme. And we're living in a time where those extremists they make up the majority of YouTube content creators and people that post online. It kind of goes hand in hand. If you're that much of an enthusiast about it, you're going to want to share that enthusiasm. But if it's a tool, you're probably not that excited about it. Yeah, it's a good tool. I like it, you know, whatever. You understand the difference? So the vast majority of our society is not enthusiastic about their computer. If it does what they want it to do and they're happy with, you know, wow, that booted fast, it's quiet, it saved me a lot of money, you're going to win over 9 out of 10, probably 99 out of 100 consumers that way. And it's that one that's saying, hey, it's not good enough, I want to spend more money. Those are the ones making the YouTube content. Those are the ones overall, the vast majority of which, that'll be the most vocal, sharing that enthusiasm with the internet. So I want you to keep in mind that the internet doesn't provide you all the information, and only provides you information from the people willing to provide it. How much information have you provided to the internet? Most of you, aside from some comments, have never created content. And why not? Because you're the ones watching the content, who should be making it for other people like you, because you make up the majority. The content creators are the small amount. There's more viewers than there are content creators. And the content creators overall on YouTube and Reddit and other forums, they're going to be extremists. We need to get regular folks like all of you watching to start making videos to talk about what it is that you like about computers. And if you all did that, all those other content creators would kind of vanish off the map, because you outnumber them probably 1,000 to 1, if not more so. Viewers to content creators. Your average viewer is not an enthusiast, it is not an extremist, and yet content for you seemingly does not exist. It's sparse. So I want you to keep that in mind when you're watching and reading things online, who that information came from. What was their motivation? And does that represent your values? Maybe, but not likely. For you, it might just be entertainment and interesting to watch how extreme people can get and how much they can care about stuff that's not that big of a deal. If you're like most people, it's, you know, it's somebody sharing their passion, and that might be an attractive thing to see, but nothing you want to do. Or maybe something you can't do because you can't afford it, which would be the reason most of us don't do it. It might seem like a good idea, but then you'll probably regret it after you spend the money and then deal with the heartache that happens with the ongoing maintenance that you never had to do with the cheaper computer. So these are things just to keep in mind and to consider to see if they apply to you or not. And not enough people give you that little fine print in their video that says, hey, this is an enthusiast video. This is not for everybody. This is by an extremist and for extremists. And if you want to watch it for entertainment, that's great. But there's very little practicality in most of those videos. And mostly people want practicality. And that's why I'm here, because that's what runs my business. Now, let me bring up the parts. Let's start prepping the board, because I'm curious if we got a good board. So let me just get this cleared out since my countertop is too small here. And we'll pull up our parts right here. I got them all stacked up right like that. Nice little pyramid of parts. Carey's pyramid of parts. All right, so if we go over here to camera 2, that should be our close-up camera. And I'll show you, we've got our Beijing S880. We'll need that here momentarily. Our Intel Core i5. I better get my glasses and make sure. Did I buy a 13 or 14? Yeah, I did get the 14500, which it says right there. It's all sealed, brand new. This is the RAM from ORICO. And this should be in black. And this is their Raceline Neon model of RAM that is DDR5 and RGB and 32 gigs, which is perfect for this build. Great value there, I believe. Oh, this is the documentation that came with the case. So we'll just put that down there. Here is our power supply. Brand new in a box, 5-year warranty, 40 bucks. I don't know how you can beat that. And it's 80 plus rated at 80 plus white. So great bargain. I probably should have bought 3 or 4 of these now that I think about it. And finally, look at how the motherboard was sent to me. This is exactly the way Amazon shipped it. It's all kind of banged up and taped up. I'm okay with it because I know it's a return board, and I'm going to throw the box. Well, I'm not going to throw away the box. The box is going to have any spare parts, documentation, or cables will be left in the box. But no one's looking at the box, so I don't care. So let's start by getting the box opened up. And inside, you can see it's pretty well banged up in there. You know, this is all dirty. Right up in here, it's all dirty. There's some bends and creases. The motherboard, you know, the static bag is filled with wrinkles and such, so we know it's been out. And then usually, underneath this cardboard, we'll have a bunch of stuff. And another way we can tell this has been returned, our I/O shield is already out of the bag. The bag is already opened, rather. We have one SATA cable, which is weird. I'm not sure how many we're supposed to get. My builds, we don't really use SATA cables anymore. Not for the last few years, but and then because this board has Wi-Fi built into it, we've got our antennas. That's it. There's no documentation. There's no drivers, although that's pretty much not a thing anymore anyway. With driver updates being as frequent as they are, you just go online and download them. So all I did was take the board out, remove it from the bag here, and inspect the socket, and it looks great. I don't see any reason why I should spend more money for a sealed box versus an open box. When you look at the condition of this board, it's super clean. I don't see any issue. Nothing visually is disturbed or abused that I can tell. It looks like it's in perfect shape. So we don't know why somebody returned this, but in most cases, it's an end user error or end user judgment that is to blame, not the technology. There are exceptions, but most of the things I buy used, most tech things like a motherboard, I'd say 8 out of 10 times, they're perfectly fine. Now, if you're not a technical person and you're not good at diagnosing, you know, basic things, then I strongly advise you stay away from returns, because returns may require a BIOS update or a reset that you're not familiar with. So you might end up returning it for the same reason the other non-technical person bought it. But if you are mildly technical and those things I just said make sense to you, then it's a pretty safe bet that whatever's wrong with this you can fix. If there's anything wrong with it, that's usually all it is. We're going to find out and put that to the test right now. I guess I won't need this power supply for a while. Oh, and it looks like I bought my power supply used because it's got cellophane tape. Oh yeah, that's definitely been used. You can tell nothing's in a bag. We do have the power cable that's not zip tied. So that means I probably paid less than $40. This was probably $25 if I look at my purchase history. I mean, why not buy a used power supply? They last forever. Well, the good ones do. They last forever from a well-known brand, and it's the same exact product. Yeah, you might be missing a power cable. If you're buying a modular power supply and you were missing one of the cables, how would you know? You'd have to check against you know, some included documentation or do some research. But non-modular, you've got all the cables, power cable, and sometimes you get the screws and sometimes you don't. But the case will come with all the screws we need, and I have lots of spares. And I don't see screws. And I don't know why on power supply returns that's so common. Somebody stole the screws. That's what it amounts to. Whoever bought this is a thief and they stole the screws. Now you could argue the value of those screws isn't worth making a big deal about it. But theft is theft. You took something that you didn't pay for, that didn't belong to you. I don't care if it's a $10,000 diamond or, you know, taking money off of someone's dresser. What was only, you know, whatever your justification is. It wasn't a lot of money. Doesn't matter. It's stolen. So I think you know where I stand on that. Let me move this power supply over by the case because we won't need that for a while. And let's get to the motherboard build here. Actually, now when I think about it, I will use that power supply when I get everything ready for the test boot outside of the case. I do like to test used components before I put them in the case so that I don't have to take them back out again. If everything's brand new, and if I'm not making a video to teach how to do this, then I just build right in the case. Why waste time and do something twice? Brand new parts very rarely are ever bad. Unless you've installed something wrong, which is probably why your system doesn't boot. It's likely going to fire up the first time if you installed it right and everything's brand new. So looking again at the socket, you know, my main concern was the condition, and that should be the only concern when purchasing a used board, is did somebody muck up the socket here? So if we go back over here to the close-up camera, you get a good look at that socket and the different lighting. And if there's a bent pin there, you'll see like a dark spot. It'll draw the eye. It sort of looks like a turd in a punch bowl. It really stands out. So the fact that that shines so evenly, and no matter what angle we put it on, that indicates all the pins are in fact aligned properly. Now, that doesn't guarantee us they are, but there's a really good chance that even if they're not exact, they're good enough. So we're going to put that to the theory here, and I'm going to turn that this way. I'll move that up a little bit, and we're going to start by putting the CPU in. Dazzle555 says, used power supply, never. Well, again, buying it from Amazon, number one. Number two, buying from a reputable power supply maker, such as Thermaltake, EVGA, Corsair, etc. Having there be enough savings to justify it. Making sure I don't have to wait a week to receive it, right? That the shipping time is going to be pretty much the same as buying it new. Also, depending on inventory. So maybe when I ordered it, they didn't have any new ones. It was sold out, and the only option I might have had was to buy a returned one. I can't tell you, because that was like a week ago, and I can't remember. But for each their own, you know, you decide at your values, and I decide at my values. If I were to sell this to a customer, I would disclose that the motherboard and power supply were returned items, but I'm going to warranty them as MSI is warranting their system, their motherboard. Thermaltake is warranting their power supply no differently. All the same warranties apply. So if this all works and goes through all of my testing fine, it's likely going to work for the next 20 years, bottom line. You know, barring damage from the customer or a power spike or storm that can cause damage. In most cases, this is not the 1970s anymore. That nervousness about the quality of electronics, especially when it comes from name brand manufacturers who are well established in the industry, has changed the definition of quality control. What you need to understand is, I want you to think about this. For thousands of years, as a species, we relied on horses. And an entire support industry for horses evolved and has been around, had been around for well over 1,000 years. And, you know, going back further than that, when we start talking about offering services like stables, carriages and wagons, saddles and horseshoes. The invention of the automobile in the late 1800s, and especially the affordable Model T that happened in the early 1900s where everybody could afford a car, resulted in that entire system of industry collapsing in 20 years. Thousands of years of industry. Blacksmiths gone, carriage makers gone, stables gone. Now they still exist for the enthusiasts and the racers, right? People who race horses. But using a horse in everyday life And all of the industry, all of the careers people had wiped out in under 20 years, replaced by the car. But then new industries to support the car, started sprouting up. And we're going to see more and more of that. I used to get calls to replace failed hard drives and failed power supplies multiple times a month. It's been, well, you tell me. You look at the history of this channel. When have you seen me replace a bad power supply? You've seen it. But when was the last time you've seen it? Where did those calls go? But now we have other services to sell, and we have to continue to be flexible and to move with the tech. So if you want to stay behind and apply the rules that were good rules many years ago, that's your choice. But I'm telling you, the only person you're hurting is yourself, because if I'm buying it, let me just tell you, if I'm buying it, and I'm a very difficult person when it comes to what I'm willing to put my reputation on. And I'm telling you that Thermaltake power supply used is going to be just fine. You understand I'm making a live unscripted video with an untested power supply. That's how confident I am with 34 years in this industry. But if you still insist on buying new, that you somehow, for some reason, think it's going to be better because it's new, I think you're letting PTSD from your past interfere with how technology has moved on since then. I'm not going to say what you're saying is impossible, but it's so unlikely. There's a word for it. It's not pragmatic. It's not very realistic. The odds of you getting a bad power supply from Amazon specifically that tests them before they sell them seems pretty low. But if you don't even want to take the slightest little bit of risk, well, that's your choice too. I measure my risk. So I feel like this risk is so low, you might as well just go buy a lottery ticket. It's like thinking I'm going to win the lottery if I go buy a ticket. One ticket. I mean, I can think that way all day, but what if I go buy a lottery ticket? How many of you think I'm going to win on that ticket right now? Because if you think that way, I don't think you're good at math. Okay. Lotteries are a tax on people that just aren't good at math. So that's my justification. That's how I see it. And further, with everything under warranty, with everything coming from Amazon and having that 30-day return policy, they're going to take it back anyway. There's no risk here, from my perspective. Okay. So you and I will agree to disagree, Dazzle555, but if this were years ago, I probably would have agreed with you. But remember, I'm dealing in such large scale, and that's the other thing. Do you have any idea? I started reposting the mini PC reviews to just a channel called Mini PC Reviews. Do you know how many mini PC reviews we've done? Over 100. And do you know we've given 70% of those away to our viewers? Prior to that, we gave away over 200 systems to veterans. And then on top of that, locally, I've given away another 40 or 50. So you're here watching this channel, and you are seeing, you don't have to take my word for it, you have seen the giveaways over and over and over again. You can see the mini reviews. You can count them. There's well over 100 of them so far, and they're not stopping. And you have seen recipients saying thank you for the computer. So well over 350 computers have been given away on this channel since 2015. So in 10 years, we're averaging sending our viewers 3 computers a month for the last 10 years. Can you imagine 350 computers in your lifetime? And that's just been, let's say, 3 a month. Can you imagine 3 a month for 10 years? So when I tell you about scale, I'm not at Dell or HP's level of scale where they're doing millions of sales every month. But for one guy running a shop, it's I mean, I'm going to pat myself on the back, because when I started adding the numbers up, I went, wow, you know, when I look behind me and see how much we've done, that's amazing. Because I definitely don't have 100 mini PCs here. They have mostly, I'd guess about 70 of them been sent out. And just so you know, right, I'm not hoarding this stuff. I try and get it out. And I am being more selective about who I provide them to, because I want to give back to our members and to our supporters. I was giving to anybody in need and found that there were a lot of people that claimed to be in need that weren't. A lot of people that would show up just to get the free thing and leave. It's sort of like offering somebody to say, hey, you can punch me in the face. And people were lining up who don't know me, they don't care. They just seems like, hey, he's given, I'm taken. And if I'm struggling and I need a little help, they're long gone. They're not looking behind them to see how I'm doing, to see how they can lend me a hand. So that's why that's shifted now, to identify true members of the community and to support them the way that they support us. I was trying to give everybody the benefit of the doubt and just give everybody, you know, who needed. The problem is there were people that said they needed it that didn't. And it got to be attracting viewers for the wrong reason, in my opinion. I want people here who want to be part of a community, not people that want to get something that's given away and then leave and never see them again. So that lesson's been learned, and all the future giveaways will go to community members, just so you know, unless they're purchased. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. 353 a month for 10 years on average. Can you imagine what that's cost me in shipping? 50 bucks a piece. All right. Some people did pay for their shipping, by the way. In the box, we've got our documentation for the CPU. Nothing else in here. So what's great about buying the non-K processors, as I mentioned, you don't have to buy a separate cooler. Doing so is unnecessary. You may choose to, but you don't have to. And thermal compound is another thing you don't have to worry about. It's already pre-applied, although it may be pre-applied on some third-party coolers. It's not guaranteed. Now, to put this in, let's see if I can go back to camera 2. Everything is shifted a little bit here, so let's go this way and that way. I want the writing to face me. I'm going to gently set that in the socket. Just like that. I can grab the edges and give it a light little, see if it moves. That's how I can tell it's seated properly. And we're going to lower this and lower this on top. Take that lid, this little cover off. This protects the pins in shipping. So if I would have ordered this motherboard without this cover over those pins, I would have immediately sent it back to Amazon. And the manufacturer, if you were to send this in for warranty without covering those pins back up, they'll kick it right back to you and say your warranty is void and null from this point forward. You are no longer, that serial number is registered as blacklisted now. And you definitely don't want to ship a computer with the CPU in it if it's a return, because you're probably never going to get your CPU back if you do. They want it returned to them in the same condition you received it, meaning no RAM, no NVMe, no storage, no CPU, no cooler. Return it the way you bought it. If you keep extra stuff on it, they're probably going to keep your stuff. Okay? Then they're not a thief. You basically gave it to them. And then our cooler, as I mentioned, already has thermal compound, and that's why this covers over the back of it. And that's to keep that compound from getting smeared or touched by anything. We want to keep it as dust-free as possible. And they have just the right amount of compound on there, measured by the factory in thickness and width and its design. You couldn't get it any better than that. You, as a human, cannot do that better. However, you can match it with an overlay. But again, a lot of people online will make a big deal about heat, and heat problems do not exist in the industry except when a fan were to go out, or a cooler isn't seated properly, the system wasn't built properly, or someone is abusing the system by overvolting and overclocking, in which case, you know, they got what they deserved. But if you follow all the instruction properly, it will work as intended, the most reliably, the most inexpensively, and the most securely, and be trouble-free for at least 10 years, on average. Once it works, it's going to work indefinitely until you start monkeying with it. That's when all bets get off the table, because then, depending on how good your monkeying is, it might be fine, it might not. So what I like to do, I've seen people route this cable around, so where the Intel logo was right up, straight up on some of the coolers. And as you can see, the Intel logo rotates here, so we don't really have an up or down. This cooler can go in any direction. However, I like the cable, for cable management purposes, to be as close to the connector as possible. So I want this cable to come out this side so that we run the shortest length possible. And this reduces any odds of the cable getting caught up in the fan and interfering, which can cause an overheat situation, which means you didn't build it right. Now, you could also wrap this cable around and find a way to secure it down. And I suppose unless you're shipping it and it gets tilted around, it'll probably stay in place depending on how the machine gets handled. But this guarantees, regardless of how the machine gets handled, that will never be a thing. So I'm all about removing the odds and putting them in my favor as much as possible so that I can have a happy customer that's more likely to refer me and to come back and buy again. I don't just want one sale. I might be hungry today, but I'll be hungry tomorrow, and I'll be hungry next month, and I'll be hungry next year. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to push down on these towers. Right out of the box, there's nothing special you need to do. Just pick a corner, push down until it clicks. Go to the opposite corner, push down until it clicks. Then go to the next corner, push down till it clicks. And finally, our last corner at the opposite of where we just were. Yeah, look, the box is collapsing. Did I miss one? One? This one doesn't seem to be going in. We can check the bottom of the board and make sure that all of these little, what we call the alligator mouth, are all opened. And for some reason, that one went in without a click, but it's definitely in there, explaining why the box was collapsing on me. And now I will normally cut this little tag off because I find it annoying. You can just pull the tag off, or you can leave it on. And then I'll grab a zip tie, and we're going to make this look nice and neat before we put it in the case. And I don't have any zip ties, so bear with me for 1 second, and I'm going to go grab my zip ties. I only need one, but you know, I got to grab the whole container to get one. And until I have Studio C here organized, it's just a little more than an arm's reach away for me to grab them. Hello.
Email.
Check my email. Okay. All right. So I can use, you know, one zip tie in the middle. Depending on how I want to make this look, I can use two zip ties if I want to be ultra neat. And likely, customers are never going to open this up and look at it, but other techs might. Whether that tech is me or somebody else, I would like them to admire the build quality. And if it's me, well, I also admire good build quality. Makes my job easier when I don't have to struggle through a jungle of cables to try and fix a simple problem that's being covered up and hidden by all the cabling, or taking more time to work around the cabling mess. So we'll just cut these pigtails off like that and like that. Anybody who tells you this cooler is not good enough is a liar. Or they're doing something outside of the operational default specification regarding voltage and clock speeds, in which case nothing applies to them. They're creating their own rules. That doesn't mean they're creating your rules. So just keep that in mind. Now, I have a couple of headers. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. System fan 1, system fan 2. Can't read what these other ones are. It looks like this is CPU fan right here. And this one is maybe a water block. I'm just curious if it's an optional or is it a water block? Yeah, pump fan. Okay, it's written in really tiny letters. Now, you could just go online to MSI's website, pull the PDF file up, you know, if you want to read the documentation. Or maybe you're not a tech and you should read the documentation. But it is pretty typical that the header closest to the CPU fan, right? So if we look, we have a header here, a header here, a header here, and a header here. This one is closest, and almost always that will be the one you want to use for a fan. Now for a liquid cooler, then the one usually next. Sometimes the one next will be a second cooler fan, such as that Thermaltake cooler had 2 fans on it. And then in that case, sometimes your all-in-one pump will be over here, or there's a setting in the BIOS to switch that to an all-in-one pump. So just keep that in mind. It's pretty simple stuff. Now, when we hook up our power supply, we have this 8-pin and we have an additional 4-pin. That additional 4-pin is not needed on a non-K processor, never ever. That's for overclockers. If you're not overclocking, you don't have to worry about that extra complexity, that extra cable, and for the power supply to provide you the extra EPS power connector, which most power supplies do not have. Certainly not at this price level, they don't. I say most because there may be some out there that are an exception to the rule, but I wouldn't expect it. So do expect to pay more if you want to do that kind of stuff. If you want to be an enthusiast, open your. It looks like we had a little OBS issue disconnect from YouTube. We didn't lose our internet over here. It was between our server and YouTube server, or our streamer and YouTube's server. So that's not on you. If you saw buffering just then, that happened on our side. Frankie B said, Carey, I just want to say thanks again for the great mini PCs. They're still running great and they are fast. That's what I'm talking about, Frankie. By the way, Frankie didn't get the fastest mini PCs because they would still be as fast for the people using them. If you got a car that can do 200 miles an hour and you only drive at most 65, what difference does it make? You're never going above that anyway. You're not even getting close. So that top end would be a waste of money if you're paying extra for it. So that's why I consult with customers and figure out what is it that you're using the computer for. How do you know, what are your needs now? What do you anticipate your needs to be in the future? Is it more of the same, or will you be changing the usage of the computer in the you anticipate maybe you're going to be getting into some different software that's more resource intensive, or do you intend on just continuing with what you're doing now indefinitely? And then according to the information they provide, I then provide a suggestion regarding RAM, storage, processor to meet those needs at the lowest price possible. And that's my default. I'm always focused on value. Hey, there's Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To joining us. He says, looks like the OBS is overloaded, getting 15 frames per second, I think, or shutter speed is too low. Well, nothing has changed on our end, Mike, with regards to our shutter speed or anything. All of that remains the same, video to video to video. Even our OBS settings are all the same. So if today's video is any different in any way, then that's the connection on YouTube side. Emails.
No? Well, I mean, besides the one. Yeah, and the internet connection.
Yeah, when I said it, I realized the streamer was still online,
yeah,
but OBS wasn't. So I made an assumption. I reacted. Our friend Mark Gaines with an Amazon gift card. He said, here's a little something towards future builds. Thank you, Mark. As always, we appreciate your generosity and your support. Mark joins us from Northern Ireland. And do we have a build coming up after this? I do. As a matter of fact, I do. But it's a build. Okay, so just an FYI. I think I'm at the stage now where I'm willing to disassemble the original streamer we had at Studio B. The gray one, the Fantex case, with the 9700K and the Kraken cooler. I think I'm going to upgrade that to something more modern, even though there's nothing wrong with it. It is over jammed with cables because of the RGB, and I can't close the panels. So I think I'm going to tone that down, both for money and for the ability to finally put the back panel back on it, make it a little more reasonable for the size of case that it is, and get all that unnecessary RGB out of there. I'm not saying it's going to be RGB free, but like the power cable RGB and stuff like that. It's taking up too much space, and I can't put the panels back on. Then we have the Cougar case that we were originally going to do for Mara, and turned out the motherboard was too big, and once again, even a big case was overcrowded because of all the RGB and liquid cooler, etc. So I have the, which motherboard is it? It's the Z890. It's over there. These glasses just made it worse. Z890 Live Mixer Wi-Fi, I think is gonna, that's the purple one, the really cool looking one, I think. And I think that'll go into that big Cougar case beautifully. So these are parts we've got laying around here, and we can turn into builds. And so likely those will be next. So thank you for your support and contribution, because, well, I think I've got everything I need for the Cougar build. On the old streamer, I will have to use a micro ATX board, and then decide if I want to go Intel or AMD. And it's a good chance if there's a micro ATX board or certain Intel or AMD CPU you want to see me use, let me know in the comments. So when I go shopping for those parts later on, I'll take those under consideration as options. So again, thank you guys for making these build videos possible. CPU fan is on. Now, I'm going to put in the storage. So the storage, we have the fanxiang S880. I've probably installed, we got to be up to 30 of these now, at least 30. Never had one go bad. Not yet. Once again, they're using the same chips and the same controller as the big name manufacturers with the same warranty, but because it doesn't have the big name tax on the name, you're going to save money. If you don't want to save money, then ignore what I'm saying. Go buy what you want, if it means that much to you. But for my customers, I'm telling you, this passes all of my muster with regards to putting my name behind it and my reputation behind it. And if things change, I'll let you know. But I'm happy to say, if these cost me $20 less and I've got 30 of them, how many $100 did that just save me? $600? Think about it. It adds up. And they're super fast. You're not making any sacrifice with these in performance, warranty, quality. It's right up there with the big names. I have not been able to identify any sacrifice whatsoever, other than it costs less. And it's got a funny name. And the only reason that name is funny is because we're not familiar with it. A lot of people think the name Carey is funny until they get to know me. Then they know it's funny. Now, this slot up here is a Gen 4 slot, and I like how they have these quick release. MSI has these quick releases. That makes this install real easy. You can see, even though it's a used motherboard, no one took the tape off of here. And we do not get any other heatsink. So if we were to put another NVMe drive here, I would probably buy one that has a heatsink on it already. But if the motherboard has a heatsink, it's going to be far superior. So don't spend extra money for an NVMe drive with a heatsink only to leave your motherboard heatsink off. You're making it worse. You spent more for a heatsink you didn't need that is nowhere near as good as the one that already color matches. It's thicker, heavier, and does a better job that you already paid for. So you bought something that you're not going to use and you paid for it. It wasn't free in most cases. You're paying extra for a part you don't need. So here I would need the heatsink on the NVMe, but here I won't. So depending on your board, you may never need your own heatsink. The heatsinks that come with the board are far superior, and they're already color matched aesthetically than anything you're going to get from the manufacturer of the SSD. Again, it's your decision, but I'm just telling you, it's wasting money. Oh, I don't need to peel that off yet. I want to put this in, and this is going to go in. And again, I don't know how well we're going to be able to pick this up on camera. This will go in right here, like that. And then if I spin around this way, maybe you can see the way that catch works. Just push this down, and there's a little lever here that I'm spinning. There, now the drive just dropped down, and as I spin this the opposite way, it locks the drive. We don't have to turn any screws. We're done, other than putting the heatsink back on. And so to put the heatsink back on, we definitely want to remove this tape. If you leave this tape on, you might as well just leave the heatsink off for all the good you're doing. In fact, you might be causing it to run hotter. See a lot of that online, where people aren't being given full instruction set from a content creator, and they're not made aware of it. And many of them still don't have heat problems. Computer will still, in most cases, run just fine. But when the system comes in for repair and a professional or more knowledgeable person looks at it, and they see that tape on there, I'm sure they'll point it out and say, hey, just so you know, as good as it runs, it would have run even better if you'd have taken the tape off. You notice one side has a hole in it, and that's likely for this post right here. That would be my guess. See how that post kind of stands on its own, whereas this is a full, this side of it here is like a little metal plate that's lengthwise versus a circle. That's often a way you can tell which way this goes on. Other ways you can tell if there's words on it, it usually flows in the same direction of all the other words on the board. And of course, it's only going to fit in one way anyway, but you could always just pay attention to how you took it off too. Or you can just flip it around each way until you figure it out. But there are usually telltale signs to watch for. That's all I'm trying to say. Once I get one side started, I don't want to tighten it all the way. That should help align at least forward and backward this side. And then it's just a matter of up or down to get it to align with the mount point. Then I can tighten that down and then tighten this down. And don't over tighten. Watch. As soon as that screw stops, I'm done. It doesn't need to be any tighter than that. Anything else is excess and overkill. We can put our RAM in here. When we're using 2 sticks of RAM, but we have 4 sockets, you always use the module closest to the socket closest to the CPU. Leave that empty. That's almost universal across ASUS, MSI, ASRock, and Gigabyte. Start with the second slot in, and then you skip the next one, and then you use the last socket closest to the power connector. There must be a space between the memory if you want the best performance. It will still work in low performance. You know, if you never want to take your car out of second gear, it'll still work. It just won't work as well when you're trying to go faster until you shift into third gear. If you want that next gear, you've got to enable dual channel mode, and you do that by skipping a socket. Now on the board, they have an etching that shows these sockets labeled DIM 1, DIM 2, DIM 3, DIM 4, and there's a little line connecting DIM, well, this one says DIM A1 and DIM B1, and then it says DIM A2 and DIM B2. That's a really stupid way to do it. But essentially, the line says use these 2 first. In other words, if you only have 2 memory modules and 4 sockets, it's identifying this socket here at the end, skipping this one, going to the next one, and skipping the one closest to the CPU. That is almost a universal truth amongst modern day motherboards here in 2025. Now we get to take a look at our brand new ORICO RAM. I've never seen or used this RAM before, but I have been enjoying the quality and price value of ORICO products. Once again, you're not paying the name brand tax on these that you will for, say, Corsair or other memory makers. But at the same time, it doesn't mean just because you're not familiar with the name or just because the price is cheaper that it's of lesser quality or has a lesser warranty. It might, and it might not. In the case of ORICO, we know that they make really good products. We don't like everything they make, but that's true of everybody, right? I don't like everything Corsair or NZXT makes either. So really no difference other than price. Let's take a look at this packaging. Go back to close-up camera here. We've got some documentation. All this documentation will go in the motherboard box. It's nicely packaged. It is black RAM, which is good. That will match our motherboard, give us a nice aesthetic. Yeah, they really outdid themselves on this packaging. They even put a little plastic protector over this plug, which is bizarre and unnecessary in my opinion. They really went above and beyond on this. Let's see if it goes in this way. See how it's wobbly? I got it backwards. Turn it 180 degrees. Put it back in. Now it's flat. Push down with one thumb and the other thumb. You should hear it click. Then I'll close these little retention levers just to prevent them from snagging on anything and getting in the way. Then we're going to skip this one, so I'll close those up. And that leaves us with the one closest to the power. So we'll grab this one. There is a little cutout here to stick your finger in there to take the RAM out. Once again, we remove the little prophylactic from the end of that. And I'll put that in. I'm noticing there's a sticker on this side and no sticker on that side. And since the sticker's facing me on this one, it must be the same way the sticker faces me. That's how I can get the orientation right the first time when I install the second one. And that installs the RAM. You'll also notice with our NVMe drive, they did give us a crappy little screwdriver, which I would just toss in the trash. And they include a couple of extra small M.2 screws in case you've lost any. Since this motherboard did not include any accessories, I'm just now paying attention to whether or not we got the other M.2 screw for this M.2 slot here. Not only did we not get the screw, we did not get the standoff either. So would it be worth paying the extra $25 to get a brand new board that would have included this? Or could we contact MSI and say, hey, you know, we bought a board that didn't include it? Or could you simply go on Amazon and buy a little standoff and screw of the right height? I don't know. But it should have been included in the box. Somebody stole it. So that's what we're at. I don't normally recommend installing more than one NVMe or more than one drive at all in a system. Most systems, we never use these. But I like having the standoff and screw there, just because if I sell this to a customer and they want to upgrade it themselves, they will not have the parts in the box, nor will they be able to do that without identifying the right standoff and the right M.2 screw. They're not always the same. So I've found something here that's a little troubling, but you know, as long as the board works, I think $25 discount, worth it. All right, so we're ready to do our first power on test just to see if everything works, right? Because it is a return board. Can't help but wonder. And it's a return power supply, so let's try that too. So let me move some things aside and we'll grab that power supply first and foremost. Let's bring that over here. This power cable will go in the motherboard box. We did not get any screws. That's why I tell you, if you're not a technical person, don't even think about buying return parts. You should have spare screws. You should have basic technical knowledge for simple things that that would likely be the reason somebody returned it. Like if somebody returned this without screws, that tells you their level of technical knowledge. And then we want to just inspect the cables for any damage. Like if there's big creases, did it cut through the insulation? I see a little dent in the insulation, but it's not going through. And this right here, you know, universally we have to use this as the CPU, the EPS power connector. Now the clip, for some reason, it's going to go on the outside. Some other boards it goes on the inside. And then we probably don't have a second one of those. No, this is for a graphics card. And we're not using a graphics card in this build. If we were, I would have gotten a more powerful power supply. But we're not building for gaming. Just an expensive luxury we can't afford. And customers aren't ordering those systems from me. I would rather sell 20 computers to one business of, you know, average i5, let's say, at $600 a system, than to sell one $3,000 computer to one consumer who's going to call me all the time with support questions because their games don't run, and I'm never going to sell them another one for years. It's a hard way to earn a living. So let them buy their gaming computers somewhere else. I don't want to deal with them. I mean, for me to deal with them, they'd have to pay me a lot more profit. I'm trying to get them a low price. So you want gaming and you want a low price, I say, go buy an Xbox, buy a PlayStation. Otherwise, go buy it from somebody else, because I have a friend of mine who does sell gaming machines, like really low-end and expensive ones, and he gives his customers one free support call. And he tells them, this is your free support call. Any other support you call for, I will charge you for, unless it's a warranty issue. And it's never a warranty issue. It's always customer doesn't know what they're doing and they're looking for free tutoring, or they did something to their system and hosed it up and now the Windows needs to be reinstalled. They don't know how to do it. And the guy will be like, okay, I'll do this once for you, but I won't do it a second time because that's not my fault. You screwed it up. It'd be like buying a new car and then you go and crash it and you want to take the car back. No, that's not how that's going to work. If you want to buy insurance, maybe that's what I need to sell, right? To make that worthwhile. Have people pay me monthly for a service. Maybe they use it a couple times right out of the gate, and then they don't use it again, but sporadically throughout the rest of the year, but they pay me every month. Then it would be worth it. I'd have something there. But businesses call me regularly all the time, so I don't have to come up with stuff like that for businesses. That's strictly a home user issue. All right. This is all twisted up, but that's fine for now. You can see you don't get a whole lot of cables with this power supply. We got some Molex, we got some SATA, and PCIe for a graphics card. But at 500 watts, any more cables than that, you'd likely overdraw this and blow a breaker or a fuse. So for that, everything's in line and adequate for the level of everything else. We don't have 128 gigs of RAM in an i5. We don't have a $350 liquid cooler on an i5. We don't have a $200 1500 watt power supply on an i5. Okay, so we're not underpowering it, we're not overpowering it across the board. We want everything to be more or less equal. Now I need a power switch. Yes, I need a power switch. Right here. And we'll plug in. This switch has an optional LED, so just for fun, I'll put the LED on. So the LED will go on those two pins. It's hard to do when you can't see. Tiny little pins. And then the power switch goes right beside them on the next two pins over. That's pretty much the same on all modern ATX, micro ATX, and even mini ITX boards. And we're not using the reset switch or the hard drive LED just for our testing purposes here. This board also has a USB Type-C 3.1, which I also think is important when building a modern system to have those USB ports for the future. Before I turn this on, I need what? An HDMI cable, a keyboard and mouse, and a power cable. So keyboard and mouse is over here. And I will turn those on and plug them into any USB port. These over here are black ports, that means they're slower. So plugging your keyboard and mouse into a faster USB port will not result in you typing any faster, and better shoes aren't going to make you run any faster either. But if only the world worked that way, we could all buy the most expensive shoes and win every race. That's the mentality of the enthusiast. It has nothing to do with their individual skill. That has to do with how much money they're willing to spend and how it looks when it's done. Oh, in benchmark numbers, how it runs in theory. That's what everything's based on for the most part, which that doesn't fly in my world. Now, with the power switch, with the keyboard and mouse, we need HDMI. We're not going to plug internet into this. We just want to be able to turn it on. And then we can check and see if there's a BIOS update for it. But first, because it's used, you know, there's a little anxiety. Will this turn on? I suspect it's going to turn on just fine. I've been wrong before. I need power. Power. I'm running out of room here. How am I going to do this? We'll go this way. Switch is now powered on the power supply. For safety reasons, you make that the last thing. You don't have to, only if you want to be safe. Now, when I hit this button, it should light up. I should see that fan spin. That's exactly what's happening. Let's switch over to our HDMI input. If I can find my mouse. And let's see if we get video out of this bad boy. And I will put camera 1 in a corner. Now, don't get nervous on that first boot taking a while. Whenever you're building a new system or starting a brand new computer, even a pre-built up that's been sitting for a while, it has to retrain the memory. And that can take 90 seconds to 3 minutes, even longer if you've got a lot of memory. Now we can see that, you know, the system had been powered on before with this error message. And if I get rid of camera 1 here, you can see the error message in full. It says press F2 to load default values. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, is press F2. Assuming I turn my keyboard on. Hold on. There it goes. And now it should ideally give us the BIOS. It shows us with BIOS version up there by the cursor. Where's my cursor? Version H90 is what we're looking at. So the next step will be to open a browser on another computer and look up the MSI product page. So MSI will be our search. In fact, let me share the screen here so you guys can see what I'm doing. Let's go to window capture. Okay, so MSI, and this is a B760, what is it called? Gaming Plus. Hard to type with one finger on a crowded desk. That seems like it, with Wi-Fi, yeah. And then the first link takes us to MSI. I don't want to get my BIOS from anybody but MSI, so pay attention to where this is taking you. Click on that link, and then we'll accept the cookies and scroll down. Where is support? You notice there's a support here and a support here. This is MSI overall general support. This is specific support for the product page you are on. So under support and drivers and downloads, we've got BIOS, driver, and utility. Okay, not everybody does this the same way. For BIOS, it says our latest BIOS is a beta. It's HC1. That's May 15th, so it just came out 8 days ago. If a beta BIOS is made available to the public, it's pretty safe for the public. If a beta BIOS is privately emailed to you from support, there's a reason it's not made public. They believe this beta BIOS is good to go. But they do put this condition in here. It's possible. It's not. But overall, I wouldn't hesitate to install this. So once again, if we go looking at what BIOS version we had, I need to remind myself because I've forgotten. We have BIOS version oh, apparently I've clicked the mouse to go into flash mode. I am not ready for that. Hold on a second. I have to go full screen over here, and I'm going to click with the other mouse. No. H90. The reason that's important, and you see the build date is August 13th of 2024. I'm curious when I look at the BIOS list to where is H90. If no H90 exists, I'm probably on the wrong page for the wrong board. So there's HB, HA, H9. So that's it right there. H90. It shows us a couple of weeks difference in the release date. That's pretty common. So how many new ones are there? 1, 2, 3, 3 new ones. And these are critical on an Intel 13th and 14th gen processor. Critical. So we absolutely want that. We're going to download it, and you'll see it downloads real quick. And then I'm going to extract this file. Now again, probably you're not seeing the rest of these windows open, but all I'm going to do is get a small flash drive out, and I'm going to plug it into the streamer temporarily to copy the BIOS over onto the flash drive. Okay, now that's done. And then I'm going to take the extracted file that I just downloaded, that will be in my downloads directory in case you've lost track of where it went. And I'm going to extract the large part of it here called HC1 is what the extension is. I'm going to right click and choose copy. I'm going to go to that flash drive that's blank FAT32 formatted and copy just the large file, not the zip file. But the extracted zip file has a large file in it that ends with .hc1, our version. Now that I've done that, let me go back to camera 1. I'm going to go back over to the streamer. In fact, let me turn off camera 1 for a second, because when I was looking at the BIOS earlier, I was looking right here, just in case I was looking at it different than you. There's our date. There's our BIOS version. It's doing this in hexadecimal, so it starts at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then it goes A, B, C, D, E, F. So right now we're on, what did I just say it was? Where's my downloads folder? Right here. Yeah, we're on HC1. Well, apparently they are going beyond hexadecimal now, right? Because now if it's going G and H, that's interesting. So they're probably going to keep going down the alphabet, I, J, K, L, M, N, as needed. All right, so let me grab the flash drive out of the streamer. Now, this is the only thing I put on the flash drive, and the reason I do that is so I don't make any mistakes. I cannot pick the wrong file if there's only one file to pick from. That's the logic I use, and I will just keep a spare flash drive. These cost $2.50 for a small 4 gig or 8 gig flash drive, even a 16 gig. I'm gonna now, let's go full screen on camera 1 before this gets too confusing for me and you both. Let's go full screen over here. And you can watch this process as I come around here. You can literally use any USB port here, so it doesn't matter. Oh, all these USB ports are black. Interesting. Usually the higher speed ones are blue, but I know it doesn't have, all these are not USB 2. So probably identified on the IO shield or within the manual for sure. So with that, we can go back to this BIOS. So let's go back over there. And I need to go full screen so I can see it. There we go. And we're going to choose to update the BIOS where right here with MSI it's called M Flash. Click on that, It says system is going to reboot to enter flash mode. MSI, as far as I know, is the only one who does this. So actually, I've seen some ASUS boards do it. Not all boards do this the same. Many you don't have to reboot. They'll just do it right in the BIOS. So the system has powered itself off and then back on again. I just saw the CPU fan stop turning. Now it's turning again. And this time when it boots into something called flash mode. That's internal in the BIOS. And the only drive we've got formatted is the USB drive. That new NVMe drive, it has no partition or formats. So the only thing it can find automatically is the one file on the one drive. That's why we don't use multiple drives, especially we're building, and why I don't use a flash drive with other files on it. When I click on it, I can look down at the bottom of the page, and it tells us our current BIOS for this model number, and these need to match, by the way, our version and our build date, and the new BIOS that we've just selected better match the model name, or you better stop. Well, actually, it probably won't even let you continue, and that would be why. And we're going from version VH.90 to VH.C1. I thought it said H1. HC1, I see the H is before the dot. So HC1, okay. So that's where my hexadecimal, it's these last two, C1 and 90. And the VH, I don't know what that stands for, but maybe they're working their way through the alphabet. Anyway, are you sure you want to select this? Yes. Now, flashing a BIOS is really no big deal. Just leave it alone. If you can't leave it alone, don't flash your BIOS. If you're impatient, intolerant, or you're a control freak that just absolutely insists on being impatient, do not do this. But for everybody else who has impulse control and can control yourself, let this take a few minutes. If you want this to succeed, don't assume anything's going wrong. Even if the screen goes blank on us, leave it alone. I cannot stress this enough, whether it's a laptop, a tablet, a phone, when it's doing these kind of updates, the best way to ensure you're going to fail is to interfere with it. It will be very clear when it's done. If you have to guess, is it done? It's not done. Leave it alone. Now, you don't have to listen to me, but if you do, I can pretty much guarantee your outcome will be successful. Do you want to know how I know? What's interesting is no issues at all with this power supply. So far as I can tell, it's 100% silent. The fan is turning. It's working no differently than a brand new power supply. There's really nothing to break in there. I mean, it's all solid state components soldered down by robotic machines exactly the same way every time. So unless it were physically damaged, dropped, kicked, etc., abused, something was spilled on it, it's a pretty hard thing to kill. So that's why I felt pretty confident buying it used, but also not so confident that I didn't just order from anybody. I want to make sure that in the unlikely event that I would need to return it, that the return will not cost me anything, and I won't be given a hassle in getting a return authorized. And so for that reason, I made sure to buy from Amazon. Now, it's very clear to me this BIOS is done, right? It's waiting on us now. And you can tell in the upper right corner that our BIOS version is now .HC1 and our BIOS build date is 8 days ago from today. That's all perfect. So the next thing that I want to do, we go back over to camera 1, is I want to get Windows installed. So I am now done with this flash drive and I can erase this BIOS file. I will never need it again unless I bought multiple boards. But like most of you probably only have one. You never need that. It's now a permanent part of the motherboard. It's programmed the board. We're done with it. So now I'm going to grab my Windows 11 installation, which is not that one. Where is it? Right here. And we'll come around here and plug that into any USB port back here. We'll just use that same one. And we will reboot the system. When the system reboots, it's going to look for where it can boot. The only place it can boot now is that flash drive. The brand new fanxiang drive has no partition still, has no format. Windows will do that for us. And the BIOS drive had no operating system. So that's why it went directly into the BIOS. I do not have to go into the BIOS and tell the motherboard where I want it to boot. nor do I recommend you do that, because that's what causes support calls. Run the system in the way it's intended, and you're going to work easier. You won't work harder. It'll get done faster, and you'll likely not need any request for help. But if you choose to not follow that advice, be prepared for the potential consequences. If you do follow the advice, then everything should happen exactly the way you see it happening here, live, unscripted, and in real time, unedited. So what I need to do is go back over to the system. And let's go to full screen over here for me. There, now I can see it. We can load the BIOS defaults if we want to. We can go to advanced. Just because we flashed it, it couldn't hurt anything. And then usually, let's see, settings. Save and exit may offer us load default settings. Restore defaults, that's what I want. That puts the board back to all the default settings just in case the BIOS update changed anything. Then save changes and reboot. So I'm not adjusting date and time. I don't care about the date and time. And the date and time will be set automatically by Windows. When people start adjusting things themselves, they make mistakes. They fat finger the date. That's when you start getting weird issues that result in support calls. Let the system stay out of the system's way. It doesn't need the hand-holding of prior generations of technology. The technology is getting better and better by doing things itself. And so the reasons we did things in the past, those reasons have gone now. We no longer need to do them. You can if you wish to, but understand you are potentially going to encounter a problem that you caused that could have been avoided if you just left it alone. So I just want to keep emphasizing that, because in theory, I should not have a job. But people keep doing things to screw their systems up, and that probably makes up 60% of my work. 40% is actual problems from faulty hardware. You know, when people click on things they shouldn't click and they end up getting a virus or screwing up their system with a bad driver, that's all completely avoidable if they would have left it alone. So here we go with Windows setup. We'll click next, US next, install Windows 11 and agree to everything, next. I'm going to say I don't have a product key, but I will purchase one from our friends at SCD Keys, because it's only $15 for a Windows 10 Pro key. And Windows 10 Pro keys, right now, they're the same as Windows 11 Pro keys, except they're cheaper. That's the only difference. That will probably go away when Windows 10 support ends in mid-October, but Microsoft makes that decision. We'll accept the license agreement, and now it's going to look for potential places to install Windows 11. It should only find one place. We actually see two places. Where it says disk 1 4 times, this represents each partition or unallocated space. And if you look at the capacity, that is our flash drive. That's the Windows 11 installer drive. Disk 0, that is our fanxiang drive with a total capacity of 1 terabyte. So we just select it, hit next, and we're going to get a summary page that says, okay, this is what you want to do, right? We're going to install Windows and we're going to keep nothing. Yes, hit install. At this point, once again, you know what I'm going to tell you, leave it alone. It'll let you know when it needs you. Let's go back to camera 1 and put it in a corner. Whoopsie, that is not camera 1. That is camera 1. And let me go look at the chat room and see what you guys are saying. Oh gosh, I've missed a lot. Okay, I'm gonna try. Geez, I love seeing the activity in the chat room, but now it's a little bit of a chore for me to catch up. Bear with me here for a second here. Ian Gooch with a 10-pound super chat says hello to Carey and everyone in the chat. Ian joining us from London, I want to say, right? Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To. If you're not familiar, he's got a great YouTube channel based out of England. Does very similar videos to what we do here, and I think if you enjoy my content, you should definitely check out his channel. Still twisting his arm to get him to make a guest appearance. We're going to just keep beating on him until he gives in. Let's see. Dave Leonard says hello. Welcome in, Dave. Eugene Eldago says hello. Welcome in, Eugene. David Graham with a $10 super chat says, thank you for being the kindest person in the tech world and for being a friend to us all. You know, I was brought up to return back what's given. So if somebody is being disrespectful or bullying, then I return it the same. And when somebody's being kind, I try to return that with, how can I phrase this? To return it even more so, right? Regardless, if they're being negative, I'll be negative even more so. If they're being generous, my intention is to be generous even more so. And I would love to see that reciprocal to never-ending consideration and respect that we give, that we get. So thank you for also being a kind person and a friend to me. You get what you give, right? That's the way I was raised, and I really, really want to be kind, but I don't want to be kind to bullies and jerks. It goes against my grain. For bullies and jerks, I want to be a bigger bully and a bigger jerk. Charlie Purdy said, thanks again for the UM890. It's running great, and I use it daily. Right on. Awesome. Minisforum makes great mini PCs. Mark Gain said he purchased a fanxiang SSD in his Project Zero build. He's had no problems, and it's fast. And Mark Gaines uses the 2 terabyte S880. Not all fanxiang drives are built equally. The S880 series, just like Western Digital has their black and blue and red series, so does fanxiang. So don't just assume because it says fanxiang it's a fast drive. Bill Sony joins us and says hello. Welcome in, Bill. I guess Peter's going to bed. It's a little late there in Scotland. Good to see you, Buster. It's always great to see Buster in our chat room. Looks like Barry Klein is also saying good night. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, Barry. Okay, so I can't see my status over here. So let me see how we're doing. Oh, we're still installing. Fantastic. Very good, very good. If you had asked a question, I haven't seen it, so please do ask it again. Or if there was a comment or anything I missed, please bring it to my attention while I'm waiting for Windows to install. Now I can spend time focusing on the chat. And then when Windows is done, I can take away my focus from the chat and focus back on the build. Overall, our investment in this build is relatively inexpensive And I think most people would be hard pressed to tell an i5 from a Core Ultra 9 these days. You'd have to be a pretty extreme user. In much the same way, you know, buying an expensive pair of shoes may not be that noticeable. It may be more psychological. It varies by person. I think a lot of people are just going for a look more so than anything else. And the feel may be real or imaginary to justify the added expense, presuming these quote-unquote faster shoes are going to be more expensive. It's sort of like the Red Bull energy drink. It's way overpriced in my opinion, and it tastes terrible. But it's an incredibly effective marketing campaign that you can sell absolute crap to people for and charge way too much for it, and they will line up to buy it if your marketing is effective. Other people will say, hey, I think it tastes great and it gives me energy and I love it and it's worth the money. But I think mostly they're buying into a culture. That's my theory. Let me get rid of camera one here for a second so I can see this. Okay, so we're going through our out-of-box experience. Click yes. And yes again. Secondary keyboard, no. No internet. Got to tell it twice. This board has Wi-Fi built onto it, so that's a little different. Now we can put a username in here for a local account, which I'll just call user, and we'll leave the password blank. That way it boots right to the desktop. And we'll leave our location setting on so our date and time can be adjusted on a regular basis, because all clocks lose minutes or gain minutes over time, plus daylight saving and things like that. It just handle all this for you automatically. So if there was a time difference on the clock based on where the motherboard was built, say like in Taiwan or somewhere in Asia, that's like 12 hours difference. So it may be that the clock represents tomorrow or yesterday. I can't remember which way it goes, but it's still not enough that it doesn't self-correct. It would have to be off by 100 years or more for there to be any issue for you to manually intervene. And the only way that's going to happen is from a human being doing it. The factory will never do that. That's only something an end user voluntarily abuses to their computer, typically without knowledge or awareness. So again, if we leave it alone, let it be a computer, it does these things for you so you don't have to. So the insistence of doing that is no longer necessary. David Graham said an i5 is good enough for most people. David, I would say an i5 is overkill for most people. In fact, I have customers running 7th gen Intel i5s that I'm telling them they've got to upgrade to Windows 11. And they're like, but there's nothing wrong with this machine. I go, I understand, but there is something wrong. It's got real big security issues. What is that? I go, well, look, we can sit here and talk for 3 hours and I can give you an education on some examples of what's going on with the internet and security, or you can just take my word on being proactive and replacing it rather than not listening, eventually having a security issue that could take your whole company down or steal your identity, and then that'll cost you 10 times more and take 10 times longer to untangle. So what do you want to do? You know, you can Google it, do your research. You need to think about it. Come back, let me know. If you're connecting to the internet, you're connecting to a world of thieves and hackers in countries far, far away that hate you. They think you're too stupid to be so easy to steal from you. So here's the mentality often with the hackers in other countries. Americans are fat, stupid, and lazy, and they don't deserve what they have. We deserve it. So if you're stupid enough to fall for my scam, I don't feel bad about stealing from you because you didn't deserve to have it. There's no guilt. They don't feel bad. They feel the opposite. They're like, I just relieved a moron of the burden of the money. Now I will use it. That's the logic, and there's almost nothing you can do legally as retaliatory. Best thing you can do is protect yourself. So if you're saying, I can't afford a new computer. Can you afford a new identity? Which one's cheaper? Which one's less anxiety and stress? Do you want to wait until that decision is made for you, or would you prefer to make that decision? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what to expect. With Windows 11 installed, we can now pull the flash drive. We're done with that one. I'm leaving this one out here to remind me to erase it so it can put it back in the drawer as an empty flash drive for a future BIOS update. Let's plug internet in. I don't know if we, on the newest motherboards, you may not get a built-in driver for the network card. It varies. So let's just see if it works. There we go. And then I'll watch that bottom right corner of the system here to see if it acknowledges. And it did acknowledge. See, these started to propagate in the system start menu here. So the next step for me is to go to Settings and Windows Update. And we'll grab all the Windows updates that have accrued since 24H2 came out last October. And then while that's checking for updates, I like to go to Advanced Options and turn this on. I like to turn this on and that on. And then I also like to get rid of this little cartoon thing down in the search. And I do that by typing in search permissions. As soon as I start typing the word, the suggestion pops up. And we can do all this while Windows Update is checking and installing. Turn that last option to off. It gets rid of it forever. And then I will turn, check my power settings. So edit power right there. I don't have to finish typing. It came up with the suggestion. And we want to make sure that the monitor does not go to sleep while we're live. And then you guys think something bad has happened. So I'll just set that to 3 hours. Everything else, I'm not too worried about at this point. We'll go back to Windows Update here just to see our progress. Looks like it had a problem. Is our date and time off? Let's see what happens here. When you buy a used motherboard, it's entirely possible somebody screwed up their date and time because they absolutely refused to leave it alone. Or were set from the factory. So look at the year that this is set. When I'm telling you that people cause their own problems, and you roll your eyes thinking, well, I don't do that. This is so common. I can tell you well ahead of time that one of the reasons people return parts is they have made a change that they never needed to change to begin with if they would have left it alone. Now, this is all happening live and unscripted. That is happening so often. I see it, not every day, but I see it very frequently, frequently enough that I'm telling you, and now I have a live example, except it looks like the date finally just auto-corrected, which is why I leave the location settings on. Now when we go to Windows Update, it'll work. But how much you want to bet? Not only was that a support call, that was likely the reason for the return. And it did not come out of the box that way. The end user did this to themselves because they were doing something they had no business doing, that didn't need to be done, that was a waste of time, and ultimately resulted in them being convinced that they have a bad motherboard when they were the one that's bad. But they can't be returned. All right, that was beautiful. I couldn't have planned that any better. That is how common that is. So just stay out. You can't make a mistake if you don't get in there to begin with. There's no reason for you to get in there unless you just refuse. And in which case, accept your consequences for better or for worse. It's just a matter of time. We all make mistakes. Essential Working Too Hard said, I only set it back at 540. You said what? Anytime you use the word it, they, that, I don't know what you're referencing because we're covering a lot of subject matter. You need to replace, when you see you're using the word it, they, them, at, or not at, there, you need to identify that for people. That'll make you a better communicator because there's no circumstance where you could over-explain. In other words, if you say, they caused a lot of problems over there, Who caused what problems where? If you say, well, Carey and his friend Mitch caused a lot of problems over at that restaurant, what restaurant? Over at Carl's Jr. I'm never going to say, oh, you didn't have to tell me who or where. You could have just said they, them. That never happens. So try to avoid, when possible, under any circumstances, using the word it, they, them, him, her, there, here, where. Tell me where, tell me what, tell me who. It makes communication so much easier. Now, if you're continually talking in one sentence and you say, Mitch and Carey went to Carl's Jr. and created problems, and they, at that place, did this other thing, that makes sense because we have the context of a flowing conversation. So it drives me a little bit crazy because I want to understand your reference, but I can't. And I'm not going to go back and do the research. So it just makes communication easier, and not just for me, for everybody in your life, even when you're speaking, when you're emailing, when you're leaving a message. So much easier to avoid those words and to clarify precisely who, what, where, when. Okay. Brought to you by Carl's Jr. Essential Working Too Hard said you were talking about the time and date. Oh, you noticed that in the BIOS earlier. I gotcha. Now we're communicating. Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. I was just watching the BIOS version. And even if I had noticed that in the BIOS, I strongly advise you not to change it. Leave it alone. Pointing that out earlier doesn't nobody no good. Until we get Windows installed, then Windows takes care of it on its own, just like I demonstrated, negating any need to even go looking. So there would have been no advantage if I had noticed your post, because I wouldn't have changed anything I've done. We would still follow the same procedure regardless of what you noticed. And it's that noticing that people get in and start monkeying with things that I'm telling you, best to not monkey with. Just leave it alone, let the system take care of it. And as you can see, that worked 100%. And that's the point I was trying to make. It's not a contest over who noticed it. And it wouldn't have made any difference if I did notice it. I still wouldn't have done anything any different. Okay, just so we're clear. I notice it when I needed to notice it. Didn't need it then. All right, I'm on a need to know basis. We got a lot of updates installing. I can hear the fan ramping up, and that's good. That means the fan curve is correct as the system's getting more resource intense application. It's speeding up, and then when whatever the process is has completed internally, it slows back down. That's what I want to hear. That ensures to me, just from listening, that everything's working like it should. Now, oh, my browser crashed again. Great. Let's go back over to the chat room. And what does this say? Oh, video driver just loaded. That's why you see the screen blank out like that. We're moving right along. This big, anytime you see these cumulative updates, they're sizable and they can take a while to install. I don't care how fast of a system you built and how much money you spent, you'll be waiting like the rest of us. So that's typical, and you're not going to spend your way out of that. So do let these updates complete. And you can see, like these that say retry, they were likely already installing in the background before I started the manual Windows Update check, and so they duplicated. So one installed and one didn't. And the reason you'll know these failed over duplication is when we reboot and apply these updates and then check for new updates, they won't be offered anymore because we've already got them. So don't let that throw you that anything is wrong. Now, if you see an update fail more than the same update fail more than twice, then that's a problem that needs to be resolved. But that very rarely happens in Windows 11. It does happen, but it's pretty rare. He said, you're working too hard. Said, I guess I've been schooled at Carey's place. I'm not trying to put you in your place. I just want to understand you. I literally just got done telling, what David Graham said, an i5 is good enough for most people. And then you said, I only said that at 5 minutes and 40 seconds. That's the next message. So you said something about the i5? You see my context? I'm reading in the order. You can see the same thing I'm seeing, right? You see that David Graham's message is above yours. I'm answering in them in the order that they came in when I'm paying attention. And so I'm not trying to chastise you. I'm just simply asking you to help me understand our communication. If you're on the other side and you're reading these chats in the order they came through, I don't know what you're referring to when you say I only set it back at 540, when the message before that is about the i5 processor being good enough for everyone. See what I'm getting at? You see how there's an avoidable confusion by simply clarifying our communication so we can make everything smoother, but it's no way, it's not a punishment or a schooling. I'm just asking, if you would do that, we could avoid further confusion. And that's for everybody in the chat room to consider, because you can see the order of the messages. And if I'm reading them in order, which is what I try to do, and that's why I do that, so I don't get confused. I still end up getting confused. All right, so while we're waiting here, I guess I can start putting some of this away. That's interesting that they put plastic on the ends of that. I think that's kind of a waste of material, but you definitely get your money's worth, I think, with this packaging that ORICO's doing. And the RAM seems just as good as any other RAM. I don't see any reason why I would not buy it. How does this go together? We'll put that over there. Beijing components or packaging components can go there. Our instructions and our CPU protection plate will go in the motherboard box. I'll think about what I want to do for a standoff and an M.2 for that other NVMe drive. I hate the idea that it's not there, because assuming this goes to a customer at some point at a very discounted price, I still don't want them to have any sacrifice made. It should run and be warranted no different than any new system and have everything they need for a potential upgrade, which in this case, as far as I can tell, is just that one M.2 standoff and screw, and I might have those extra laying around here. I could also try writing into MSI and just seeing if they'll send me one, because they might just send me one. And it may be something I do for no reason, because if the person who buys it never upgrades it, and I went through all that trouble for nothing. So if I would have bought it new, I definitely would have gotten it. That much I can tell you. But I also think for saving $25, still worth it. Because remember, I can still send this back. If I think saving $25 wasn't worth it, even though there's nothing wrong with it, I can take everything back out, put the little cover over the CPU socket, put it back exactly the way I received it in this box, send it back to Amazon free of charge, and get a 100% refund, and then go ahead and pay full price for a new one if that's what I want to do. I'm just not going to, because, I'm very happy with the savings and a very minor sacrifice, apparently. Same with the power supply. There's nothing wrong with this power supply. It's typically all end user issue. And even though I didn't get the screws, what do I care? The case is going to come with screws. And speaking of that, we'll have to postpone the rest of the build because we're already over 2 hours. But the next part of the build will be, of course, putting the motherboard and the power supply into that digital 207 Lian Li case. And that should probably take another, 2-hour video. So I guess for now, we'll schedule that for next Friday, unless I can do it sooner than that. So part 1 today, part 2 next Friday will be the plan. Of course, every Monday we do members-only videos, even though it's Memorial Day. I hope you'll join me if you have time to hang out with us if you're a member. It starts at 1 o'clock Pacific time every Monday. And every show I do should start at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Sometimes the shows may start later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, or Sundays, because those are like bonus shows as a time and availability become available. If I can make the content, I will, even if it means I start a little later. What else can I tell you? Our friends at SCD Keys still offering that 30% off coupon code. And links for everything, all the parts today, the case that we haven't gotten to really, that's all in the video notes, thanks to Mara. Mara is our channel administrator. She takes care of all of the emails, and she takes care of, you know, talking with potential companies for product reviews and organizing all of that, which takes that off my plate so I can focus more on this side of the camera. I feel like I'm forgetting. Oh, I want to shout out a thank you to Charlie Purdy and Mark Gaines for their Amazon gift cards. They're both very generous, and on top of that, they're members and frequent Super Chat contributors as well. Give an important message to return to somebody right there. Very good. Speaking of those super chats, let me give a shout out one more time to all of the generous members who have contributed today. Let me go to full screen on camera 1 and jump over to this browser and say thank you once again to our friend Buster. Kicked us off with a 10-pound super chat today. Essential Working Too Hard renewed membership for 20 months just to get schooled. Worth every penny. Come on. Thank you for being a member and for participating in our chat with us. Planet Cryos, always good to see. Planet Cryos, he's been back to making videos, a lot of BIOS update videos over on his YouTube channel. So be sure and check that out if you like this kind of content. Thank you to Dorado Systems with that $49.99 Romanian, I can't remember the name of that currency, but thank you for super chat. And he says, have a great show. Again, thank you to Dorado Systems. Barry Klein with a $5 super chat said, this is my payment for asking an unnecessary question yesterday. Oh, I think he had asked something that he jumped in and missed the beginning of the video and then asked about what we already talked about in the beginning of the video. Who cares? But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. Peter VZ joining us from the Netherlands with a €2 super chat says for the support. Ian Gooch with a 10-pound super chat joining us from London. Thank you and cheers to Ian. And David Graham with a $10 super chat saying that I'm the kindest person in the tech world. Some people would disagree. I'm honest, but I try to be kind and honest at the same time. Some people think all honesty is mean. But you get it. David gets it. Thank you for getting it. And all of our members obviously get it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be members. And we'd love for you guys watching the video who would love to be a part of our live chat community to consider supporting the channel. Otherwise, we're just making commercials. You can watch commercials for free. Let me rephrase. You can watch our stuff for free too. But if you want to participate with us, please help support us so we can continue to buy this equipment and then end up just making paid commercials. TikTok videos, YouTube Shorts, and Facebook Reels, those are commercials, guys. You're watching, I don't know if you're aware of it, my generation fast-forwarded past commercials. This new generation is getting angry at long-form content that we're not making them commercials. They're arguing and fighting and cursing me out because I won't make 90-second commercials. Is it me, or is that really bizarre? Didn't we always fast forward past the commercials? Isn't that what an ad blocker does? And now that's all people do. Like, they'll just scroll through 90-second TikTok commercials. They don't think they're watching a commercial, but mostly they're watching a commercial. And by the way, There were great commercials. Well, I watched the Super Bowl just to watch the commercials. Sometimes the commercials are better than the Super Bowl. So just because it's a commercial doesn't mean it's bad. But it's still a commercial. That's why it's only 90 seconds long. And it's just weird to me that people now insist on making commercials. And I'm like, hey, you have at that, man. My generation, we fast forwarded past that nonsense. And this generation, that's all they want to watch. So there you go. Sign of getting older. I find it humorous and absurd that society is becoming like idiocracy. They're going to get their law degree at Costco. You just wait. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I'm going to finish the updates on this, and then I'll check for drivers and put those on. I'll do that off camera, so that when we follow up on next Friday, we can get right to putting the parts into the case, and we'll check out cable management, get that screen hooked up, get the screen software or any Lian Li specific software. We'll wait until we need it to put that in, if I'm assuming such a thing is required. And we'll kind of go over the case a bit and its design and what I think of it. Given it's Lian Li, it's probably going to be great. And given that it's only $110, less than $110, seems like a really good value from what I'm seeing so far. I've spent a lot more for cases that were a lot worse. All right, so there you go. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all again very, very soon. And until next time, bye for now.